Coming up on a newscast, leaders of the U.S., Australia, India, and Japan kicked off their Quad summit. They covered compliance to new international law and adopted new initiatives aimed at addressing illegal fishing. Chinese and Russian warplanes briefly entered South Korea's air defense zone without notice. This comes while Beijing and Moscow held their first joint drill since the start of the Ukraine crisis. The 2022 World Gas Conference is held in Daegu. President Yoon says South Korea will play its part in helping achieve carbon neutrality.
Hello and welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with our top story. Quad leaders met in Tokyo. They discussed a wide range of issues, including the Ukraine crisis and ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific region. Kim Da-mi starts us off.
The leaders of the United States, Australia, India, and Japan on Tuesday reaffirmed their shared goal of a free and open Indo-Pacific region. As part of the Quad's second meeting in 8 months, the Ukraine crisis topped the agenda in Tokyo. All four sides stressed that such a forceful act would not be tolerated in the Indo-Pacific region.
We cannot let the same thing happen in the Indo-Pacific region. Under such difficult conditions, we need to be united and show solidarity among the four countries.
Australia's new Prime Minister Anthony Albanese noted his new government's priorities align with the Quad agenda, which the U.S. President Joe Biden underlined as not just a passing fad.
It's the fact of the matter is that we have a lot of work to do, keeping this region peaceful and stable, tackling this pandemic and the next one, and addressing the climate crisis as referenced by our new colleague.
The latest agreement also covered a new joint response plan, which will include an information sharing system to deter China's illegal fishing in the region. The Quad leaders have further agreed to invest more than $50 billion in infrastructure in the region over the next 5 years and support the developing countries facing debt problems, also a move aimed at keeping Beijing's growing power in check. They discussed North Korea's recent flurry of military activities and agreed to cooperate for the regime's complete denuclearization. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
6 foreign warplanes briefly entered South Korea's air defense zone without notice on Tuesday, but they did not enter the country's airspace. 2 Chinese warplanes flew into the Cadiz at about 8 a.m. and stayed in sight for about an hour and a half before moving away. About 2 hours later, 4 Russian military aircraft crossed into the zone before flying away about 15 minutes later. In response, Seoul's military reportedly deployed KF-15K and KF-16 fighter jets to the area. This appears to have happened while Beijing and Moscow held their first joint drill since Russia's invasion of Ukraine at a time when U.S. President Joe Biden is in the middle of Asia tour. For the first time this year, South Korean Navy Rear Admiral will be in charge of part of the world's largest international naval drills next month in Hawaii, the U.S.-led Rim of the Pacific exercise. Seoul has taken part in the drill 16 times, but so far has been represented by a captain. The Navy reportedly plans to send 2 large vessels, the 14,500-ton amphibious assault ship Marado and an 1,800-ton submarine. It will be the first time the country is deploying vessels of that size. The 2022 World Gas Conference is on in Daegu. The event focused on resolving global energy supply crisis and boosting investment in the renewable energy sector. Kim Jung provides a glimpse of what to expect.
The opening ceremony for the 28th World Gas Conference was held in Daegu on Tuesday. Hosted by the International Gas Union, some 20,000 people from 80 countries, including executives from around 460 gas corporations, are to attend the triannual event through Friday. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy said it marks the biggest international event held in South Korea during the pandemic, with 62 rounds of discussion sessions scheduled to be held along with exhibition booths of natural gas and energy companies, including hydrogen companies. The conference has been held in Asia before, Japan in 2003 and Malaysia in 2012. Under the theme A Sustainable Future Powered by Gas, the event serves as a chance for various entities to share their direction for the role of gas as a vital energy source to bridge the energy transition. This year, the main focus for discussion among participants includes resolving the global energy supply crisis stemming from the war in Ukraine and boosting investment for the renewable energy sector, including hydrogen.
And we're moving on from the global health crisis. There is another human tragedy unfolding. I never thought that I will opening World Gas Conference while there is armed conflict on the European continent and the global energy commodity crisis. Those events are putting new pressures on the economies, on people who have just started to recover hardships of COVID lockdown.
The event is also meaningful for South Korea as it first introduced natural gas to the country in 1986, according to the presidential office. Since then, South Korea has become the world's third largest importer of liquefied natural gas and the top exporter of LNG carriers. The presidential office added that South Korea also has the second largest amount of LNG reserves. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
South Korea will seek to achieve carbon neutrality by pursuing the right blend of nuclear power, renewable energy, and natural gas. That's coming from President Yoon Suk-yeol as he opened the World Gas Conference.
우리의 지속 가능한 성장과 미래가 에너지 정책에 달려있다 해도 과언이 아닐 것입니다. 이를 위해 원전과 재생에너지, 천연가스를 합리적으로 믹스해 나가야 합니다.
Noting the growing importance of energy security, the South Korean leader emphasized diversifying import sources and boosting private sector-led investment overseas. Yoon has been pledging to scrap his predecessor's nuclear phase-out policy. Samsung Electronics is investing heavily over the next 5 years to expand its businesses with strong future growth. Hyundai also announced similar plans. Their goal is to create a domestic hub for next-gen businesses. Ji-young tells us more.
South Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics has announced hundreds of billions of dollars of new investment over the next 5 years in areas that promise strong future growth. Samsung said Tuesday that it's going to invest 450 trillion won, which is more than 350 billion US dollars, in profitable industries, including semiconductors and bioscience. This new 5-year investment plan is an increase of 40% from the last one. It said roughly 80% of the money will be spent in Korea on R&D and new facilities. The firm said that if Samsung's foundry business were to become the world's #1 player, it would have an economic effect on the scale of creating a conglomerate even bigger than Samsung Electronics. Samsung Electronics currently ranks second in the foundry business after Taiwan's TSMC. Also, the company added it plans to hire 80,000 new employees and sees the investment leading to the creation of more than 1 million jobs more broadly. Samsung also plans to make new investments overseas.
Samsung became the first international company to make semiconductors in the United States. We highly value our friendship and look forward to continuing our special relationship.
Meanwhile, South Korea's Hyundai Motor Group also said by 2025, it'll invest nearly $50 billion to create a domestic hub for its next-generation businesses. The auto giant plans to spend some $13 billion to secure a global competitive edge in electric and eco-friendly cars. Also, for the development of robotics, urban air mobility, and artificial intelligence, the company has allocated roughly $7 billion. An expert says the government should ease regulations for the investments to come to fruition.
There have been a lot of regulations and restrictions that's going to be hampering investment in Korea. So, in order for that investment plan to be coming to fruition, I think the government has to take a lot of dramatic measures in deregulations and innovative reformation in government policy.
Ji-yeong, Arirang News.
South Korea took part in a U.S.-led meeting to coordinate international military aid for Ukraine. Seoul's defense ministry reviews providing more support. No decision yet on if that will include lethal aid. Bae-eun-ji has the latest.
Lending a helping hand to Ukraine. That's what more than 40 countries got together to do on Monday. The U.S. hosted a second meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, which included South Korea and NATO and EU nations. During the virtual meeting, some 20 countries pledged more security aid for the war-torn nation. Those included Denmark, which the Pentagon chief said has pledged to provide long-range anti-ship missiles.
Many countries are donating critically needed artillery ammunition, coastal defense systems, and tanks and other armored vehicles. Others came forward with new commitments for training Ukraine's forces and sustaining its military systems.
Their first contact group meeting was at Ramstein Air Base in Germany last month. Since the first meeting, countries including Australia, Canada, and the UK have provided military equipment to Ukraine. Following the virtual meeting, South Korea's defense ministry said on Tuesday that it's thinking of giving more assistance to Kyiv.
Considering the situation in Ukraine, we are currently pushing ahead with plans to provide additional military aid. We are making efforts to make sure it's given as soon as possible.
The ministry, however, refused to mention whether that includes providing lethal weapons to Ukraine and said that'll be decided on after careful consideration. So far, the country has provided $50 million of non-lethal assistance, such as medical supplies, bulletproof vests, and helmets. Hyundai, Arirang News.
More than 100 cases of monkeypox have been confirmed in 16 countries outside Africa. South Korean authorities are closely monitoring the situation. Travelers arriving from countries with confirmed cases are required to report any symptoms. Choi Min-jung brings the updates.
South Korean health authorities are strengthening measures to prevent an inflow of the monkeypox virus from overseas.
Human-to-human transmission appears to be rare for monkeypox, but we should not rule out the possibility of it being imported from overseas as more people travel. And we also have to take the 21-day incubation period into consideration.
There are no cases confirmed in the country as of Tuesday, but authorities have vowed to keep close watch on what's happening overseas. They have also asked citizens to refrain from coming into close contact with wild animals and to be cautious when traveling to countries with confirmed cases. Inbound travelers arriving from those countries, including the United States and nations in Europe, must report to a quarantine officer if they have certain symptoms such as a rash or fever. People are also required to call the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency call center 1339 if they develop such symptoms within 3 weeks of arriving in Korea. The KDCA says it had already established a testing system for monkeypox back in 2016 with PCR tests as its main method. To prepare for a potential outbreak in Korea, the agency says it plans to find ways to expand testing across the country.
The spread of monkeypox is emerging as a global health issue, but South Korea established a diagnostic system early on and is prepared with countermeasures.
Authorities and experts also say that people should remain vigilant but shouldn't be overly concerned.
Unlike COVID-19, monkeypox transmission is not airborne, but instead, people can become infected if they come into close contact with a confirmed case. So I think the chances of the virus becoming widespread are low. But we still have to monitor the situation closely as the virus could be in the country already.
The expert added that the best way to prevent a potential spread in the country would be to wear masks and frequently wash hands. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the nation's daily COVID-19 tally stood at 26,344. Currently, there are 32 people severely ill and 19 more people have died. Cases are still declining overall. This was the lowest number on a Tuesday since early February. Compared to last week, this time the figures have gone down by 10,000. North Korea recorded over 134,500 new suspected cases of COVID-19. The third day in a row, the figure has been under 200,000. Its total number of cases to date is approaching 3 million. Of those infected, the regime state media reported that 86% of them have recovered. The death toll remains at 68. No response yet to South Korea's offer for talks on providing medical aid. The South Korean military believes Pyongyang is now ready to carry out another provocation at a time of its choosing. That could be the regime's 7th nuclear test or another missile launch. According to Han Sung-woo, the reclusive state may have finished preparations for both.
It seems all that's left for North Korea to stage its 7th nuclear test is Kim Jong-un's final cue. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said in a briefing on Tuesday that they believe North Korea has finished preparations for a nuclear test and a missile launch, adding that South Korea and the United States are working together to keep close tabs on any related movement from the North and are maintaining a firm readiness posture. The assessment comes after Victor Cha, a senior vice president at the US-based Center for Strategic and International Studies, raised the possibility that Pyongyang could carry out a provocation on US Memorial Day, which falls on May 30th. At a CSIS forum on Monday, US local time, Cha mentioned North Korea has a history of launching provocations on American holidays, such as the 4th of July. The regime, in fact, test-fired its Hwasong-14 intercontinental ballistic missile on Independence Day in 2017. Many had initially predicted the North to carry out a missile or nuclear test around US President Joe Biden's trip to Northeast Asia. Analysts here say that may have been slightly delayed due to Pyongyang's ongoing struggle against COVID-19 and the recent death of one of its top military officials, Hyun Chol-ae. 한성우, Arirang News.
Back here in Indonesia, President Yoon had a dinner meeting with the National Assembly Speaker and 2 deputy speakers to thank them before their term ends on Sunday. As a gift, Yoon gave Park Byeong-seug a framed picture taken of him with Joe Biden. Park talked to Yoon about his conversation with the U.S. leader, where the duo discussed their decades of experience. The meeting is largely seen as part of efforts by Yoon to increase interaction with the nation's legislative branch, which is dominated by the main opposition party. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, South Korea's special envoy called for COVID-19 aid to North Korea. Speaking with the CEO of Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, Na Kyung-won expressed concerns over the recent virus outbreak in Pyongyang and explained South Korea's policy to provide medical assistance to the North. They exchanged views on the need for a joint international response to help the regime contain the virus. The former lawmaker also met with the WTO Director General and the President of the World Economic Forum to discuss pressing issues such as the ongoing global supply chain crunch and energy crisis. A survey shows South Koreans expect to see prices rise by 3.3%. That's actually lower than the rate we've been seeing. Consumers are also now less optimistic about the economy overall. Lee Ji-yoon helps us look beyond the digits.
South Koreans are feeling the squeeze at grocery stores and gas stations. With rising prices, the public's expectation of future inflation rose for a 4th straight month in May to reach its highest in almost a decade. The Bank of Korea's monthly survey showed that South Koreans expect consumer inflation to average a median 3.3% over the next 12 months. Adding fuel to the fire, the Consumer Sentiment Index also dipped to its lowest since August last year. It stood at 102.6 in May, down 1.2 points from a month earlier, although the reading above 100 means that optimists still outnumber pessimists. But Professor Yang Jun-seok from the Catholic University of Korea says it's not all bad news.
The expected inflation of 3.3% is less than the current inflation of 4.8%, which means that the public expects this current high inflation to be temporary.
At this point, then, what should the government do to keep inflation from shooting up further?
Not only trying to have policies which will keep prices from rising too much, but also raising the interest rates, but perhaps not too much so that the economy does not go into recession.
Eyes are now on whether the BOK will raise rates, and if so, by how much, during a rate-setting meeting this Thursday. Lee Ji-yoon, Arirang News.
Flights between Gimpo and Haneda airports are set to resume early next month after a suspension of more than 2 years due to COVID-19. According to Korea Airports Corporation, the route is expected to be reopened around June 8th. The service is the shortest flight route that connects Seoul and Tokyo, and prior to the pandemic was used by some 2 million passengers per year. Korean Air and Asian Airlines, as well as Japan Airlines and All Nippon Airways, will resume the service. Korean Air is extending the expiration date for mileage earned on its membership program by another year. For miles due to expire at the end of this year, they'll be extended to the end of 2023. Miles on Korean Air would normally expire after 10 years. Miles that would have expired in the first 2 years of the pandemic have already been extended to the end of this year. The country's flagship carrier will also give those miles another 6 months until June 2023. A local biotech company has come up with a way to raise the efficacy and reduce the adverse effects of anti-cancer drugs. They get the job done by making it possible to inject them in the active form. Yoon explains further.
This is an anti-cancer drug called irinotecan that's been used to treat colon cancer. It gets injected into a patient in an inactive form before becoming active within the patient's body. This action not only makes the drug less efficient, but it also has risks of side effects.
Irinotecan is the most commonly used anti-cancer drug for metastatic colon cancer. It's inactive, so needs to be converted into an active anti-cancer substance, SN38, in the liver. The conversion rate's about 5%, so it's necessary to develop a new anti-cancer compound to increase the treatment's effect.
Now, a domestic bio company has developed a method that melts the substances together in their active form, the first time that technology has made this possible.
We attach a hydrophilic compound to the parts of the insoluble drug that have similar properties. That forms a primary particle, but this primary particle also has both hydrophilic and hydrophobic parts. So we've developed a method that encloses this amphipathic compound to melt the insoluble particles.
Last year, this biodevelopment company presented their results from an animal testing to the American Cancer Society, during which they showed the drug's anti-cancer substance to be 4 times more effective in their active state. Since then, the company has conducted phase 1 clinical trials for colon cancer and stomach cancer and aim to enter phase 2 of clinical trials by the second half of this year. When this method becomes approved for commercialization, it will allow the anti-cancer drug to be administered in its active form, which would be in smaller doses than before, with the additional advantage of reducing side effects. Yoon, Arirang News.
Turning to the world of sports, Son Heung-min is included in the Premier League team of the season by UK broadcaster Sky Sports, a group of EPL's 11 best performers. He finished at the top of the Sky Sports power rankings and was chosen as one of the team's 3 forwards. Sky lauded Son for his clinical performance against Norwich City on the final day of the season, where he scored 2 more goals to become the first Asian player in EPL history to win the Golden Boot. The South Korean star also made the Daily Mail Team of the Year, and another put together by BBC sport pundit Garth Crooks. Son is back in Korea for the national team's friendlies with Brazil, Chile, and Paraguay in June. Starting Thursday, more parts of Cheongwade will be open to the public. That includes what used to be the presidential residence, allowing visitors to see the dress room, living room, and bedroom, among other areas of the property. The former top office first opened to the public on May 10th, but tours only showed the residential gardens along with some other parts of the complex. The event was made possible after President Yoon relocated the presidential office to the Yongsan complex. Some 400,000 people have visited the site so far.
Another day of summer-like heat is on the cards for tomorrow. Highs will be hiking up to 28 degrees Celsius in Seoul, which is about 4 degrees higher than the norms. Along with unseasonable heat, UV radiation will be intense nationwide. In order to avoid any skin aggravation, make sure to wear plenty of sunblock. Inland regions will see light rain starting tomorrow evening. Showers will begin from the west coast. By Thursday morning, showers will have spread across central regions and to parts of the south. That includes Jeollabuk-do and Gyeongsang-buk-do provinces. The amount of rain will be fairly trivial with about 5 millimeters. Along with the rain, a surge of cold air will filter into the nation, temporarily bringing temperatures down. Sunny conditions will dominate for the morning hours. Morning lows in Seoul will start up at 17 degrees. As for the daily highs, Gyeongju will be hot at 33 degrees, Chuncheon 30, Daejeon and Gwangju will reach 31 degrees. For the next 2 days, readings will drop a couple degrees and sweltering conditions will make a return this weekend. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
It's time to wrap things up. As always, thank you for staying with us.